Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Airspeed's Avatar Rewatch video. This one's going to be for Book 2 Earth Episode 16, Appa's Lost Days. And yeah, this is a JM Animation animated episode, and it's a bit of a weird one. It's definitely an episode of like two halves. The first half I think is a little bit boring. You know, maybe it's a little bit harsh to say that, but it's definitely, I think, more apparent when like you really analyze the second half and you see all the bigger connections being made to set up more stuff. And definitely the second half of the episode justifies this being an episode, but it still remains a somewhat experimental episode in terms of like taking a break at such a like important point of the season to have an episode like basically exclusively focused on Appa and what Appa's been up to. It's a cool idea for an episode, and obviously it gets praise because of that. But I do question to a degree maybe devoting a full episode to what happened. It's overall fine, and as I said, it is saved by a lot of the key connections and plot point setup moments later on, because I think that's one of the more standout things within this episode is that, as I said in the last two reviews, the whole City and Walls and Secrets thing is that it basically stops Zuko and Aang's plot. They're just kind of there in the city and they can't really do anything. Whereas they use this episode and the fact that Appa is separate from everyone, and they basically have Appa and who he meets set up a bunch of different plot points for the remainder of the season, while also making all these other connections that have happened. In terms of, obviously, of course, they explain where he's gone. That's the whole episode. It explains where he's been since the library, and basically explaining where he is now. Long Feng's kind of teasing of like he knows where Appa is actually, no, he actually captured Appa. You know, Long Feng, the Dai Li, they have Appa and they're holding him hostage. But it also makes little connections like, oh, the tale of Momo from the last episode. The reason the pygmy pumas know where the footprint is because they were up on a rooftop and they saw Appa fly into the city, and so clearly followed him in and arrived at that location where Long Feng captured him just after this had happened. But they still found the footprint. Then you have, I suppose, the other key bits of just like, yeah, like without the whole like Azula Suki stuff in this episode and then the Patik stuff, I think definitely you'd see, I think, a lot more people being critical of this episode. But because the Azula Suki stuff sets up like a big plot point that happens like at the end, towards the end of season 3, and then the Guru Patik stuff is the direct setup of like what's happening next, of just this guru wants to teach Aang something, that makes this important, and it makes actually following Appa on this journey more than just, oh, where was Appa? It makes it this thing of like, while Appa was away, he actually encountered Suki, and Suki ended up saving him, and then he met Guru Patik at the Eastern Air Temple, and that's where Aang kind of needs to go next. It presents, you know, a direction for things to go. Like if the team ever find Appa, and they manage to, I assume, get the message back, then that's where, you know, things are going. So it presents the plot where the main characters don't actually have one almost at the moment. As for, you know, the first half of the episode, you know, it's fine. They cover a lot of stuff in the desert where it's just like, okay, the sandbenders capture Appa, they sell him to the kind of beetle tribe people, they sell him to the circus, and it's the same circus that we know of. You know, Appa ends up escaping from the circus, ends up in a lot of situations as he goes through parts of the desert where like he encounters the buzzard wasps. He then ends up fighting a porcupine, and he ends up basically, you know, very scared, very distrustful of people, and ends up, you know, injured, really in a bad state when the Kyoshi warriors end up finding Appa, which, you know, they obviously at this point have gone through all of the events of like up to like the Serpent's Pass, and Suki leaving kind of directly sets up why she's in or around that area where Appa is. And it's nice to have her like be somewhat of a focus. A big moment in the episode is like Suki meeting Appa. She knows he's been missing, so it makes complete sense that she has to help Appa, get him back to Aang, because they're a key player in the war, and her making that sacrifice of like holding off Azula and, you know, forcing Appa away is a really big moment. And even just the tease of like, okay, the Kyoshi Warriors versus the Ozai's Angels, and it, you know, I think it would have been a fight. I would have appreciated getting a little bit more on this fight. I think perhaps the only problem is that Suki was the only like known character really within the Kyoshi Warriors, so it's the usual thing of just when you have a group of characters and then you don't know the names of the other ones, of course they're not going to be as good of a fighter as the named ones. So Suki stands up quite well against the three of them, but the other Kyoshi Warriors don't fare too well. And you know, it's cool to get to see them using all their weaponry like that. They have a katana sword, they have like shields, the different uses for the fans, that they are, you know, skilled with a variety of different weapons, but we don't really see them use them all that much. So it's pretty interesting at this point where we are in the comics, where like, okay, Suki must have some chi blocking training from Ty Lee, and then Ty Lee clearly has some warrior training from the Kyoshi Warriors. Those two must be exceptionally skilled non-bender fighters at this point. But yeah, the Azula versus Suki thing is interesting. Just that, yeah, Azula makes an appearance in this episode. You also have like other cool moments of just, you know, when Appa flies away, he flies over Zuko and Iroh's ship as they're on their way to Ba Sing Se. Iroh spots Appa, and Zuko wakes up just missing Appa, and obviously Iroh doesn't tell Zuko about it because he knows that will give Zuko hope, and, you know, immediately pursue finding the Avatar again when Iroh knows that is not the correct path to take. So you get a lot of cool moments like that. Just these little connections of just like, oh, you know, Iroh's holding something back from Zuko, and it kind of sets up a little bit of a thing of like Appa and Zuko. You know, there's a few references like from Azula to like, oh, I'm surprised, given that Appa's afraid of fire, you haven't managed to capture him yet, which is obviously a key decision that ends up happening later on in the series, in a couple of episodes' time. But yeah, there's that. The ending with the like unknown situation within the fight. Clearly Azula has the advantage over Suki, but at this stage the other Kyoshi Warriors are basically out of the fight, and it's Suki versus Azula, but Mei and Ty Lee are there as well, so you kind of have to assume that maybe Suki puts up a good fight but gets captured, and it's just interesting that they kind of moved away from that plot without actually telling you the actual story. And then it's this thing of like, we know because we followed Appa, but Appa can't really, you know, communicate to like the team when he reunites with like Team Avatar. He can't communicate to them that like something happened with Suki. He obviously knows the connection to the group and Suki, but there's no way of him really getting that across to them and like informing them about what happened to Suki. So it makes her like, oh, she's in the Boiling Rock prison. It makes it a really cool reveal when it eventually happens. We then move obviously towards the end of the episode to the Eastern Air Temple and the meeting Guru Patik, who obviously like is an interesting character because one, he's like 150 years old. We get that confirmed. We know that he's had this vision. He's a very spiritual person, and he kind of reveals all these kind of unique techniques of being able to like sense people's like energy and that affecting how they are, in that he's able to calm Appa down, kind of using very spiritual kind of techniques, and you know, the fact that he's had a vision that he knows he will need to help out the Avatar at some point, and that it will happen at the Eastern Air Temple, and Appa is the way that he's going to get Aang to him. It's a really cool dynamic of just, oh, we're going to get to see one of the other air temples. We've already seen two of them, the southern and northern one. Now we'll get to see the eastern one, which leaves only then like one left, the western air temple, which we get to see later on in the series. So really cool idea for a character, especially when they do the whole, you know, everything is connected bit with him, of just, he's able to, you know, connect the fact that Appa and Aang have such a strong connection that in a way their energies are like entwined. So by sensing Appa, who has a strong connection to Aang, he can basically give Appa a sense of like, this is where Aang is, and guide him towards him. I suppose it's meant to be a similar power to the whole idea of like Aang in the swamp, or Korra later on with the spirit vines, and then even within the city she's able to do that kind of sensing power. And here's someone who is clearly enlightened has been a spiritual person for many, many, many years. He's so experienced. It makes sense that he's able to do this kind of crazy sensory technique to guide Appa towards Aang. And he's just, we know he's there waiting for Aang to arrive. So, you know, it's those connections at the end, I think, and throughout the entire episode that make this, like, a notable episode. The whole setup of, like, Iroh never told Zuko about Appa. Appa knows what happened to Suki, but he can't communicate to anyone. You know, Azula kind of knows that, you know, Appa is kind of separated from the rest of the team. Kind of those type of moments. Even, yeah, as I said, the Patik connection of just like, oh, there's a plot point. How are they going to, like, approach making that all happen? And now that we know that Long Feng was the one who, like, captured Appa and he's in the city, but he's captured by these people, what's going to be the moment right now that breaks everything down within Ba Sing Se? What causes the team to make this investigation work out, where, like, they suddenly investigate the Dai Li, they come across the fact that they have Appa and manage to get him out? What makes that happen? And, you know, and the fact that, you know, again, there's this other connection of just, like, the one thing we're almost forgetting about here, of just that Zuko, Iroh, and Team Avatar are all in the city. What if they meet? What if they come across each other? Like, how would that change everything? Because Iroh doesn't know that the team is in the city. He just knows that Appa is kind of separated from the group, but he doesn't know where the group is. And so that's a ongoing thing, which, you know, obviously ends up happening at a later point. But, yeah, you know, fairly to the point episode. It's not one of my favorite episodes, just because I feel the first half, they used the time in the first half of the episode a little bit too much on just, you know, the desert, like, oh, he was sold to this person and then sold to this person. You know, it's stuff we needed to get given the name of the episode and the aim of the episode, but it's just, it's a little dull at times at the very start of the episode before the notable stuff happens, like his fight with the porcupine, the circus. Just traveling through the desert in that first section is a little bit dull, but overall, unique, fun idea for an episode, and of course it won an award for its portrayal of cruelty to animals. And so that's a unique thing that the show has, that it was praised for kind of having an episode focusing on an animal and doing it really, really well, and that coming from a show that uses these crazy hybrid animals and not just actual animals. So that's huge praise that it got that award. But yeah, that has been the video. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on the episode. But yeah, that's been the video for today. Thanks for watching, and bye.